Okay, so Simon McMillan, very passionate salmon angler. Enjoyed my time on the river. Been lucky enough to spend a few hours out today with Fishing Game. Harry and Bryce gave us a bit of a lesson on catching the fish, but it was a good time. A little bit windy, but a lot of fun. But Harry's asked if we can run through a little bit of the gear that we use. This is the sort of thing that I prefer to use up the river. Overhead style reel. Mine's left-hand wind, but obviously the right-hand wind as well. Rod length will be anywhere from 7 foot to 9 foot. This one's 8'6", a little bit longer than most, but really nice to control the lure in the water. 20-pound braid for the braided lines onto a fluorocarbon leader, and then your classic Z spinner. As you've seen today, silver, but a little bit of flash on the back, and I certainly like to put a lot of emphasis on the hook. The hook's the key component to what you're doing, keeping everything taut when you've got a fish on. That's the upriver scenario. When we move from there, come down closer to the mouth, very similar, but everything's just a little bit heavier. Slightly heavier gauge rod, 28 gram lure as opposed to 22 we're talking about there, but still the nice sharp hooks, slightly heavier rod, same length, give you plenty of control in those heavier water conditions.
Rightio, so here we've got a lighter weight spin set up for the 14 gram Z spinner. These are ideal for when your water clarity is a lot clearer, just so the fish don't get as much time to see it. That's the crucial part there, or else they'll just dodge the lure. And then over here, if we want a slightly sporting challenge, we've got the fly rod. So 9 foot's the general sort of length. 8 weight is perfect, good grunt for a sort of 10 to 20 pound fish. And then I'm running here a sink tip section, so that's probably about 3 to 4 meters long, and it will sink 7 inches a second, so it's going quite quick. And then the rest of it's a floating body, so you can bend the line, because bending's important, or else your lure is just going to drag on the surface without it sinking. And then same thing, running about a 15 pound fluorocarbon leader on that. So for a sporting challenge, give the fly rod a go.
So as you saw earlier this morning when Bryce caught his first fish of the day, we're fishing at the top, quite a narrow gut. If you look down the river from there, downstream, the river was quite wide, quite hard, a lot of heavy current, and we're just looking for somewhere that's going to confine the fish, something that's going to narrow them up. There's a nice bar, you can see it a long way down the river, and it's just going to narrow up, and put the fish a lot closer to you, and giving your lure a much better chance of spending more time in front of the fish. Narrow pieces of water, but coming from the main flow, where the fish are going to come out of some hard water, look for a little bit of period of rest before they move on further up the river.
So as you can see on the footage there, where you'd want to cast, there was a dark edge. I would have put my lure probably a metre over that dark edge, so when it's bouncing along and it rolls off the edge, it drops straight down into that deeper water. That's where the fish would tend to sit, probably within a couple of metres of that bank, because it's a lot quieter and they're not having to work as hard to sit in the current.
So then once you've got the lure into that lie where Harry's talking about, it's about the feel from there. The spinner, we're wanting to get that spinner up, and it's hard to imagine, but sort of a foot off the bottom and feeling it wobbling its way around. As you probably saw with Bryce, like to keep in contact with the line, even though it's braid, just every little bit of sensitivity from there, just on the line as you're retrieving. It might be a slight little bit of retrieve on the reel to keep that lure wiggling. The take can be really aggressive, no doubt that a fish is taking it, but it can also be very soft, so anything that changes is worth giving a strike. That salmon could just stop the spinner in its swing, it could absolutely smash it and be really aggressive on the take. So getting it in the spot like Harry's talking about, making sure your spoon's wobbling around. The talk is, you're fishing the bottom. You don't want to be dredging the bottom, and that lure to be up, wiggling its way around, feeling for any change in that wobble in the lure.
So as Simon explained about the lure swinging, if your lure is actually on the bottom too much, so you'll feel it bounce repetitively quite close together, then it's actually not swimming properly or getting the right wobble, so the fish will just ignore it, it will just go under the fish or around them. They're actually not going to take it, because they're not going to eat anything off the bottom. It's got to be within 30 to 50 centimetres off the bottom.
So as you would have seen today, it was really windy. dust flying down the river, we've all got dust in our eyes, and the conditions weather-wise weren't perfect because of that. But the river conditions were spot on. That slightly milky blue, clearing after a fresh, and those are the conditions that the fish like. It's really important for salmon to take the opportunity when it arises. If the river's right and you can get out there, go and do it. It gives you the best shot of capturing one of these trophies.
As the season progresses throughout the summer months, once the rivers start to get low and clear, the mouth's a great option just because the fish will surge in and out with the tides, and obviously upriver the water's just getting clearer and clearer, so the salmon will start just swimming to the side of your lure and not actually wanting to take. But those fish pulsing in and out of the mouth waiting for a fresh, they're now the ones that to target. In this episode, we want to show what river flows are best for fishing in each of our salmon rivers. This is another very important part of salmon fishing, knowing when these rivers are fishable according to the river data, which you can find on the Environment Canterbury website. Generally, when the rivers are sitting at their average flow, it's a great time to fish as it's not too clear and it's not at all dirty. Whenever you drive over these rivers on the state highway and you see the colour of the water is a deep blue colour, then that is the perfect conditions for targeting salmon. Once the river flows drop about 30 cumex below its average flow, then this is where trying different tactics comes into play, as the fish will start behaving differently, and as the flows continue to drop, you will find the water temperature is also increasing. Generally, what causes these rivers to flood, rise and level is when it is raining along the main divide, which the rain comes from the northwest weather. Once the flows drop back to their average flow, this is another great trigger for fish to enter the river system. So fishing on the back of a flood will also up your chances of catching a salmon. A simple method to know whether the river is fishable or not is simply wade out into the river about knee to mid-thigh depth, and if you can't see your feet, then I'd suggest the river is still unfishable. Another great way to check these river conditions is by using cameras that a company called Outdoor Access have put around the district, and you can get a live footage of what the river conditions are looking like. The harvest card is a new system which has been introduced to our anglers, and this is very crucial for anglers to fill out the card correctly and put your information on the Fishing Game website via an online form. For us, knowing the length of the fish is more important than the weight, because the length provides a better indication of age that the fish has entered the river system. This information also helps Fishing Game understand how many salmon are being harvested from the rivers, so that way we can make sure that salmon fishing will be as sustainable into the future, and the next generation of anglers can enjoy targeting these sports fish. Remember, you must carry your harvest card with you while you're out on the river. You need to show this with your license if you get approached by a ranger.